Hey class, welcome back. We are still talking about the Cold War today, and we're talking about the Berlin Airlift. I was wrong about Red Scare and all that on my last video. We are talking about the very first conflict in the Cold War. This would be called the very first conflict in the Cold War, the Berlin Airlift. It is where after World War II, Berlin was split into four different sections. The United States controlled one section, Britain controls one section, the Soviet Union controlled one section, and I believe the French controlled one section. So it was split into all these different sections. Berlin was, and Russia decided, hey, we've got this control. We're going to cut off everything to our part of the city, and so they forced them in order to get food in there to over like 2 million people at a time, to fly in food for them, drop in food. And they did this over several month period, uh, until finally the United States, or not the United States, the Soviet Union gave up and opened back up the borders. So this is the Cold War Berlin Airlift. That's what we're talking about. All right. So what was it? It could be called the first battle of the Cold War, like I said. It was when Western countries delivered much needed food and supplies to the city of Berlin through the air because all routes were blocked by the Soviet Union. So they had the Soviet Union, they shut off their side and blocked all routes to it by the Soviet Union. And that was what the Berlin Airlift was. And you see here pictures of it flying in food and supplies to them.
What was it? The Berlin Airlift could be called the first battle of the Cold War. It was when Western countries delivered much needed food and supplies to the city of Berlin through the air because all other routes were blocked by the Soviet Union.
All right. So, like I said, after World War II, Germany was divided into the Allies into four zones. All right. You had four zones. You had the American zone, you had the British zone, you had the French zone, and you had the Soviet zone. And Soviet controlled Berlin, or part of Berlin here. They each controlled a different zone. Like I said, the capital of Germany, Berlin, was located in the Soviet Union zone, but control of this city was also split into four different zones. So it was located here, but it was also split into four different zones. So each one of them had control of it. But the Soviet Union wanted this country to be a communist country, right? So they were had stuff up their sleeves trying to get it to where, okay, well, maybe they'll just give up. If we block up the roads and we block all this off, they'll give up and allow us to be in total control of this country.
After World War II, at the end of World War II, the country of Germany was divided by the Allies into four zones. Great Britain, France, the United States, and the Soviet Union each controlled a different zone. The capital of Germany, Berlin, was located in the Soviet Union zone, but control of this city was also split into four zones between the four countries.
All right. So tensions between the East and the West. With the war over, their tensions begin to mount between the democratic countries of the West and the communist countries controlled by the Soviet Union in the East. So they, over communism and democracy, it had a clash. All right. The West was determined to stop the spread of communism. They had already done the Marshall Plan, they had done the Truman Doctrine, and this made it really clear, hey, we don't want the spread of communism to happen in other countries.
East and West. With the war over, tensions began to mount between the democratic countries of the West and the communist countries controlled by the Soviet Union of the East. The West was determined to stop the spread of communism, and the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine made this clear.
All right. So the West also wanted the country of Germany to be united under one democratic government. So the West wanted the Germany to be a democracy, a democratic government. The Soviet Union did not want this. All right. They wanted it to be a communist government. So the two sides were at odds over the future of Germany. And the West tried to introduce a new currency to it, but Soviets refused it and said, no, we're not going to use that currency in our zone. So they tried to try a new way of money. A new money is what currency is. But the Soviets, they refused. Hey, we're not going to use this in our zone. So tensions just kept rising and rising and rising here.
East and West tensions continued. The West also wanted the country of Germany to be united under one democratic government. The Soviet Union didn't want this. Soon the two sides were at odds over the future of Germany. The West introduced a new currency, but the Soviets refused to use it in their zone.
All right. So blockading Berlin. So the city of Berlin, it was an island in the middle of the Soviet Union controlled zone. So the West sent supplies there via railroads. They sent supplies using railroads, using roads most of the time. But Soviets wanted, hey, we want total control of Berlin. It's in our zone. We want total control of it. They just figured, hey, if we cut off these supplies, these routes, all right, the roads, the railroads, there, if we cut them off, then it'll fall under control of us because they'll give up eventually. They won't have a way to send these supplies into it if we do this. And that's what they wanted. They wanted total control of Berlin. It was in their zone.
Blockading Berlin. The city of Berlin was an island in the middle of the Soviet-controlled zone. The West sent supplies there via railroads and roads. However, the Soviets wanted total control of Berlin. They figured if they cut off Berlin from the external supplies and food, then it would fall under their control.
So on June 24th, 1948, the Soviets blocked all railroad and traffic to Berlin. They cut off the electricity coming from the Soviet part of the city, and they stopped all traffic going in and out of the city. The only way in was to fly. So there was no way for anybody to get out of Berlin. You couldn't get so you couldn't do anything. They cut off all routes except for flying.
Blockading Berlin continued. On June 24th, 1948, the Soviets blocked all railroad and road traffic to Berlin. They cut off the electricity coming from the Soviet part of the city. They halted all traffic going in and out of the city. The only way in was to fly.
All right. So when it first started, there was about 36 days worth of food in Berlin. All right. So they also needed a lot of coal. They burned coal for energy and other items such as medical supplies. So when it first started, they started running low on food. And they thought, hey, no, they're not going to worry about doing all this. But the West was determined, hey, we're going to get food to these people. And that's what they did.
Running out of food. When the blockade first started, the city of Berlin had around 36 days worth of food. They also needed tons of coal for energy and other items such as medical supplies.
All right. So they didn't want to go to war. This is the Cold War. The war, actually, a direct war never happened. So without going to war or giving up the city of Berlin, the only option the Western countries had was to try to fly in all the supplies. It was like a big task, okay? Because there were over 2 million people living in the city at that time. So that's a lot. That's a lot of people living in one area to try to deliver food to, and not being able to deliver it in by road or railroad. So they estimate it's going to take over 1,500 tons of food each day to keep these people alive.
The airlift. Without going to war or giving up the city of Berlin, the only option the Western countries had was to try and fly in all the supplies. This was a huge task. There were over 2 million people living in the city at the time. The Army estimated that it would take over 1,500 tons of food each day to keep them alive.
All right. So the Soviets said, the airlift isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. They're going to keep people going to give up. All right. They're eventually going to give up. So over the next 10 months, the United States and Great Britain, they flew around 277,000 flights, all right, into Berlin. They carried over 2.3 million tons of supplies in the city. And on May the 12th, 1949, the Soviet Union, they stopped this blockade and the airlift was over. But 2.3 million tons of supplies into it, okay? 277,000 flights. They did not give up like the Soviet wanted them to do. Soviet Union wanted them to give up so they could have total control of the city of Berlin.
Airlift continued. The Soviets did not believe that an airlift would work. They felt that the people of Berlin would eventually give up. Over the next 10 months, the United States and Great Britain flew around 277,000 flights into Berlin. They carried over 2.3 million tons of supplies into the city. On May 12, 1949, the Soviet Union stopped the blockade and the airlift was over.
All right, comprehension questions. What could be called the first battle of the Cold War? We just talked about it today. Was it A, the Berlin Airlift, B, the Bay of Pigs, or C, nothing? It was A, the Berlin Airlift is what we talked about. It could be called the first battle of the Cold War.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number 2, what country was divided into 4 zones after World War II? A, the United States, B, Germany, or C, Britain? It was B, Germany was divided into 4 zones. It had the Soviet zone, the United States zone, the British zone, and the French zone. And if you look right here, you can see that Berlin was clearly in the Soviet zone.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number 3, what did the Soviet Union do to cut off the supplies to the city of Berlin? A, they blockaded the roads and the train routes, shut them down. B, nothing. Or C, they bombed it. A, they blockaded the roads and the trains to the city in order to try to cut off the supplies. Also, they cut off all the electricity that was going on, that was in Berlin, their half of the city.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number 4, what was the only way they could get into the city during the blockade? A, by car, B, by train, or C, they had to fly in? It is C, they had to fly in. They had cut off the roads for all the roads where you drive in. They had cut off the trains. So they had to fly in all of this food and supplies into the city.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
And number 5, when did the Soviet Union stop the blockade? A, 1985, B, 1999, or C, 1949? It is C, 1949. About 10 months after they started the blockade when they decided to stop it.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, class. We'll be back next time. We'll be talking about Joseph Stalin and how much of a dictator he really was, okay, in all of this. And he was not a very nice man. Some would say, I would say he's probably on the same level as Adolf Hitler and all of this. So, but anyway, you all have a good day, and I will see you next time.